Hi YouTube! In this video I review the 27-inch 5K iMac. Strap yourselves in, this will be a long one. Before we begin, bear in mind that this is my first iMac and actually my first Mac desktop since my Mac Mini back in 2009, which, by the way, started my YouTube channel. I have learned a lot since and hopefully become a lot better at doing these review videos, so let's get started. First up is display. I have never owned an Apple display before, and the closest to quality display I come is the 15-inch MacBook Pro Retina I bought 3 years ago, which you can find a review on YouTube. And let's say the display caused a few problems in the beginning. I'll just say ghosting and let you do the Google search. Now Apple have made these Retina displays for 4 years, and it has resulted in a 27-inch display at 5120 by 2880 pixels, otherwise known as 5K. And this display is gorgeous. Brilliant colors and a strong backlight. Notice my Mac is placed next to a window, where the sun peeks in a couple of hours in the afternoon. Not a problem, I just turn the brightness of the display up, and this thing is bright enough to be seen even though the sun is in my face. Most of the time the display is large enough for a lot of work, which is brilliant. Having a lot of things going on is easy, and when you're on YouTube and you're running into some good 4K footage, this display comes into its own. The slow-mo guys video I'm showing here I have the link to in the description. And unlike previous iMac displays, there is no discoloration with less than optimal angles. Try to Google for the 2007 aluminum iMac display discoloration and you'll see what I mean. But I'll just stop myself here, otherwise I can talk for this entire video about this display. It is just that good. As this is my first iMac, there's certainly one thing I have noticed. This is a beautiful thing to put in your office or in your living room or wherever you want it. The design may be over 10 years old, but it still looks perfect. But there is just one thing I have a little problem with, and that is all the ports are on the back. And I get it, they can't design it any way differently because that would screw everything up, but it's just a little hard at putting your USB devices and other things into these ports when they're on the back without getting that annoying scratching sound. But it's just a little gentle touch and you'll just have to get used to it. However, that said, when you sit behind one of these things, you just can't help but smile. A smile on your face is guaranteed. I haven't had any serious processor-intensive tasks running on this iMac just yet. Might need some more in the graphics card department, but we'll get to that shortly. But that said, this thing is fast. I haven't been able to not multitask on it yet. I have had a few iMovie projects going, and exporting them in the background while doing something else is not a problem. Sometimes even my games are minimized while I do something else, and it doesn't really show any signs of slowdowns at all. However, performance comes with noise, or does it? Now, I live in an apartment building built in the 1950s, so the floors creak and I can hear my neighbors if they have the TV loud or maybe a loud conversation, so it's rarely entirely quiet where I live. And therefore I rarely hear the fan in the iMac. When I play games, the sounds from the game squelch the fan noise easy, as that's not very loud. It's hearable if there is quiet, yes. I would like to record the noise, but I can't record it. My mic isn't good enough for that. When the iMac is idling though, I can hear the fan. If there is quiet, usually early in the morning, when everything is quiet, the fan starts the second I take my Mac out of sleep mode, and when I have no music going, I can actually hear the fan and it's actually a little bit annoying. Some convection cooling to deal with the CPU in browsing the internet and checking mail and calendar tasks would have been real nice. Or at least running the fan a little bit slower so you could keep the Mac quiet. Now, what kind of iMac is this? Let me walk you through the specifications of this beast. This is the mid-tier model of the 5K iMacs. It comes as standard with a 3.2 GHz Intel Core i5 quad-core processor, which can turbo boost to 3.6 GHz. And that's the Skylake processor, by the way. The standard of this is 8 gigs of memory, and I have upgraded mine to 16 gigabytes of memory. Instead of the 1 terabyte Fusion drive, mine has the 512 gigabyte pure SSD PCI Express based hard drive, which can read and write at up to 1.8 gigabytes per second at its peak. And if you get one, get the SSD. I mean that it's really essential for the speed. And the graphics card in this one is the AMD R9 M390 with 2 gigabytes of memory. Add all of this up and you get a monster of an iMac with no compromise. And with that said, let's throw this thing into some gaming and see what it can do. But before we start with the games that are written specifically for the Mac, I would like to show you one other game that is only built for Windows. To play it on my Mac, I use Crossover, which, if you don't know, is a piece of software that can run most Windows games under the Mac without installing Windows. It just translates everything on the fly. And that game we're about to look into is Crysis. Back in the day when I got into gaming, Crysis was pretty much one of the games that kicked it off. And could a computer back then run Crysis in a high graphics setting? Well, then you had an awesome computer. And here I'm playing Crysis, and honestly, my iMac is doing Crysis as well as the best desktop PC I had before I moved to my notebooks. I usually play a little bit better than I'm showing in this video, but I'm sitting a little awkward with the camera next to me, and it just knowing that it's being recorded, it just completely screws up my concentration. So please don't mind my gaming skills, they're a lot better than I'm showing here. Anyway, I'm just going to load a game in Crysis here, and I'm going to load the game called Assault. Or the map Assault. This is probably the one that'll destroy the graphics card the most. And by the way, I haven't cut any loading screens during these games at all. All loading screens are regular speed, uncut, everything. It's just along the gameplay I cut a little, so I can probably show you everything around the game. And here we're going straight into a cutscene. I'll just let it run without commentation.
Man, I gotta get me one of those.
Yeah, like Uncle Sam's gonna spend millions to protect your scrawny ass, Johnson.
Hell, you won't be mouthing off when I've got my super suit. I'll go ninja on your ass.
Now that I'd like to see.
Now if you'll look closely right now, you can see a few hiccups and a few lags here. It happens every once in a while when it needs to load a whole lot of stuff instantaneously. Like when we get out of this VTOL, it needs to load the entire landscape and everything around us. And it just has a little drawback in performance. It feels as if there's some kind of bottleneck where it just can't force all these translations through Crossover. However, once the game gets running, everything runs pretty smooth. There's just a few peaks here and there where things are a little, but this is one of the hardest maps for the game to run. I'm going to show you a little bit of the daylight gaming here where things just work absolutely perfectly. Bye-bye Koreans, sorry, I'm a pretty good shot when I want to. And basically that's how Crysis runs in this system, but as you'll see in a short moment, everything is running in 1920 by 1080 in resolution, and I'm having every single graphics setting set to high. The audio, by the way, is coming out of the speakers next to the iMac, not the iMac itself. Just so you know. But let's just take a look at the graphics settings here. I'll leave you to pause the video if you want to study the graphics settings more, but everything is on high except the motion blur, which I have turned off. Next game I would like to show you is Tomb Raider. And Tomb Raider came out, I think, in 2014 for the Mac. It was originally released in 2013. This is the Tomb Raider 2013, should you be in doubt about that. In Tomb Raider 2013, though, I haven't experienced what I experienced in Crysis, where everything suddenly just bottlenecks and everything just stops for a half a second before it can render everything. Tomb Raider just runs absolutely right out of the highway. It just performs perfectly. It is kind of pricey, but at this point I think there is some proof out there that Macs aren't completely hopeless for gaming. as this is actually performing pretty well. You can see the landscape and everything, it just does it. There is just no slowdown, no nothing, it just keeps up. And sorry about this, guards, I'm gonna have to take you out. I'm just gonna show you just a brief moment of these games. If any one of you out there would like a proper demonstration of these games where we just focus only on these games, you can just write in the comment section or send me a personal message, and I'll do an additional video about these games specifically. So, but anyway, just a quick demonstration of Tomb Raider running here. And again, the resolution is 1920 by 1080 and everything is in high settings. You can just pause the video if you want to study my graphics settings here. Now, the last game up I would like to show you is The Sims 4. The Sims 4 came out again a little bit later for the Mac initially, but it's here now and is running completely native on OS X. And it's actually running exceptionally great on the iMac. I'm running in 1920 by 1080, and I'm running in high graphics and very high graphics for the settings where it's possible. And this game, when you start it up, there is a little problem keeping up. If you notice very closely here when I load my family, or rather my family of one, my Sim, Gordon Ramsay here, trying to build up a restaurant empire here, you can just notice a tiny bit of lag when it goes into the game. Go. Just a tiny bit, but it really is tiny. However, when the game has run for about 1 or 2 minutes, it has completely squashed all this lagging and everything. It just plows through. And if you notice closely to the lower left corner, I have activated the frame counter so you can keep a look on the frame count. I think, however, Sims 4 is trying to limit it to around 30-35 frames per second, as it rarely gets any higher. And maybe I said that a little too soon. I can just see the counter going to 40 and 50 down there. I usually don't play with it on. I just turned it on for the purposes of this video. I'm just going to cut a little bit through the actions here and get this restaurant up and going. Have a lot of Sims here. And again, as you can see, everything is just running. There is no lagging. It deals with all the Sims without a problem. I could show a whole lot of more games, but I think at this point you get it. If you would like to see a game demoed on this particular iMac, feel free to contact me either via a message on YouTube or in the comment section below. If I can borrow the game or in other ways get my hands on the game, I will gladly do a demo. Please keep mass multiplayer games out of it. I don't do MMO games. And all games must be running native on OS X. Don't require Windows. Just get those rules clear. Now, no review of mine can be rosy red, but I haven't encountered many problems in the 2 months I have owned this iMac, but I have come across a few. First up, the Bluetooth antenna, something that has plagued the Mac since OS X Yosemite. It happens sometimes where the Bluetooth antenna just completely stops working and my mouse and keyboard are disconnected. It can be solved by connecting the keyboard with the charging cable and opening up the Bluetooth preference panel. I don't know why it happens, but it does once every 2 weeks or so. Hopefully Mac OS Sierra will finally do away with this problem. And sometimes I have experienced a total system freeze. I think I found a workaround though. It seems like WebGL in Safari is the culprit, but I'm still testing on that one. The Bluetooth companions just need a mention before my verdict. I can't say anything about the new Magic Mouse since I don't use it. I don't like the touch surface, and the secondary clicking balance is difficult to get right every time. So I use the Logitech M557 instead. The Magic Keyboard is very nice to the feel, but because the way of the keys are laid out, it takes some time getting used to, and I haven't quite gotten there yet. I'm really happy about the autocorrect in Pages right now, because when I wrote this manuscript I had tons of typos. In the future I may replace the keyboard depending on whether I get used to it or not. And as for juice on the battery, well, I haven't charged my keyboard yet. It's still running on the battery that it had from the factory, and in this current moment my Bluetooth keyboard is still rocking 40% of battery. So pretty good there. Overall though, with this Mac, it is by far the best Mac I have ever owned, period. It brings back power to my games, which is a pleasure. The display is brilliant for working a lot and watching some beautiful video footage. I simply can't complain about anything else than the software hiccups. For me this is easy. 6 out of 6 stars, and thank you for watching.